Those steps were supported by the United Nations and the OSCE, which got involved in the work of the relevant mechanisms and sent their observers to the zones of conflict. In spite of certain difficulties, peacekeeping and negotiating mechanisms did work, helping to bridge positions and to achieve concrete agreements. However, prospects for settlement, which was already in sight, were ruined when, at the end of 2003, the political power in Georgia was taken by way of revolution by Mr. Saakashvili, who immediately started to threaten the use of force to solve the South Ossetia and Abkhazia problems. In May 2004, special forces and troops of the Ministry of the Interior of Georgia were deployed in the zone of the Georgian-Ossetian conflict. And in August, Georgian troops shelled Tsinval and tried to take it. With active mediation of Russia, the then Prime Minister of Georgia, Zurab Zhvania, and the leader of South Ossetia, Eduard Kokoity, signed a ceasefire protocol and, in November 2004, a document on ways to normalize relations in a step-by-step manner. After the mysterious death in February 2005 of Zurab Zhvania, who was a sensible politician, Saakashvili categorically rejected all the previously achieved agreements. That was also the case with regard to the Abkhazian settlement on the basis of the ceasefire and disengagement agreement signed in Moscow on May 14, 1994. In accordance with the agreement, collective peacekeeping forces were deployed in the zone of the Georgia-Abkhazia conflict. In addition, the UN Observer Mission in Georgia and the group of friends of the UN Secretary General in Georgia were established. Having brought in 2006 the Georgian military contingent into the Upper Kadori in violation of all the UN agreements and decisions, Saakashvili disrupted the emerging progress in the settlement process within these mechanisms, including the implementation of the agreements of March 2003 between Vladimir Putin and Eduard Shevardnadze on joint efforts to bring back refugees and establish the railway communication between Sochi and Tbilisi. Saakashvili continued to overtly ignore Georgia's commitments and arrangements within the UN and OSCE and established puppet administrative institutions for Abkhazia and South Ossetia so as to drive the final nail into the coffin of the negotiating process. All years of Saakashvili's rule were marked by his absolute inability to live up to agreements, continuous provocations and stage incidents in the conflict areas, attacks against Russian peacekeepers, disparaging attitude towards democratically elected leaders of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. Since the outbreak of the conflicts in Abkhazia and South Ossetia in the early 90s, as a result of Tbilisi actions, Russia has been doing its utmost to contribute to their settlement on the basis of recognition of the territorial integrity of Georgia. Russia has taken this position despite the fact that the proclamation by Georgia of its independence violated the right of Abkhazia and South Ossetia to self-determination. In accordance with the law of the USSR on the procedure for addressing the issues related to the secession of a Union's republic, autonomous entities that formed part of Union's republics were entitled to resolve themselves the issues of their stay within the Union and their state legal status in case of the secession of the republic. Georgia prevented Abkhazia and South Ossetia from exercising that right. Nevertheless, Russia consistently followed its policy, performed its peacekeeping and mediating functions in good faith, sought to contribute to attaining peace agreements, showed restraint and patience in the face of provocations. Our positions remained intact even after the unilateral declaration of independence by Kosovo. By the aggressive attack against South Ossetia on the night of August 8, 2008, which resulted in numerous human losses, including among the peacekeepers and other Russian citizens, and by the preparation of a similar action against Abkhazia, Saakashvili has himself dashed the possibility of the territorial integrity of Georgia. Using repeatedly brutal military force against the peoples, whom, according to his words, he would like to see within his state, Saakashvili left them with no other choice but to ensure their security and the right to exist through self-determination as independent states. It is hardly possible that Saakashvili did not realize the consequences with which an attempt to resolve the Abkhaz and South Ossetian conflicts by force was fraught. As early as in February 2006, he said in an interview, and I quote, "I will never give an order to start a military operation. I do not want people to die, since blood in the Caucasus means blood not even for decades, but for centuries," end of quote. Thus, he knew what he was doing. One should not forget about the role of those who have been conniving all those years at the militarist regime of Saakashvili, who have been supplying offensive weapons to him in violation of OEC and European Union rules, who have been discouraging him from assuming obligations not to use force, who have been fostering a feeling of impunity in him, in particular with regard to his authoritarian actions aimed at stamping out dissent in Georgia. We know that at some stages the external patrons of Saakashvili tried to prevent him from reckless military adventures. However, it is obvious that he completely went out of control.